In today's video, we're giving this little table a makeover. The previous owner let me know that it was painted with latex paint, so I'll be removing the latex. And there are some issues with the veneer. Some of it's popping up, so I can glue that down, but other pieces are actually missing. So we'll have to remove the latex and see what we can do. I'm using citrus strip gel to remove the latex, and I use my chip brush just to move the citrus strip around. I have a video on how I remove latex paint with citrus strip, and I'll leave the link in the description box if anyone wants to check it out. It's pretty in-depth and thorough, and I explain a lot of the things I do and why, so I'll leave that for you. I always cover my citrus strip with some plastic wrap because it sort of locks in the heat, and I find it much easier to then scrape the citrus strip and the latex paint off. I wait about 45 minutes and then I use my plastic scraper. I don't usually use a metal scraper because I don't want to damage what's underneath, so a plastic scraper just works a little bit better for me. It's a little bit more gentle on the piece. I also use an extremely fine grit with a mineral spirits wash to wash down the piece afterwards, and that just gets rid of a lot of the extra latex and the citrus strip, and it sort of cleans it up. But when I have little creases like this, I like to use a wire brush, and you can use I think this was a brass one I'm using now, and then I usually go in with a steel. That's the steel. I go in with a steel one to get the really hard to reach places, and you don't have to press hard. You can be pretty gentle with it and it'll come up pretty easy. And I really like working in sections, so instead of doing the entire piece at once and making a giant mess, it's easier for me to just do the top, the middle, and then the bottom. It's the next day and I'm going over the piece with my little mouse sander. I just want to make sure that the surface is nice and smooth, that most of the latex is off, so the little sander just helps with that. I have it strip sanded and I cleaned it with my Dixie Belle's White Lightning. Now I want to do some of the repairs, and I'm going to start with the veneer that's popping up. I'm just using my wood glue and a little artist brush, and I'm going to just put it under there and then use my clamp to clamp it for a couple hours. When you put your clamp on, some of the glue will squirt out the sides. You want to be sure to remove that because once it dries, it's really hard to remove. So now I really wanted to stain this piece again, but because there is a lot of damage to the veneer, I'm just going to use some wood filler and my artist brush and just fill it in. Now I'm sanding the dried wood filler flat. I'm using the color chocolate to paint the legs and the sides. There are some watermarks and stains on the top, so I'm going to use Dixie Belle's Boss just to protect it. This step is probably not necessary at all, but I'm just taking the extra precaution that maybe this will seal in some of that unevenness, and if anything wants to pop through, it'll just sort of seal it. Now I'm adding a coat of burlap to the tabletop sections, and there's two of them. I'm gonna do 2 coats, waiting for it to dry in between coats. And I also ended up doing 2 coats of chocolate to the sides and the legs. My 2 tabletops are covered in burlap. So now I'm taking that burlap and I'm bringing it down to all the details on the table, and I'm just dry brushing it. Now I wanted to add a glaze, and I don't have any glazing mediums, so we're gonna just make our glaze with some gator hide and the color coffee bean. You can use equal parts. I did a little bit more gator hide than I did coffee bean. I just wanted to tint my sealer because I know that I can remove the sealer a lot more easy than I can remove the paint. So if I don't like it, I can take it off really quick, and if I like it, I can add another coat if I want it to be darker. So adding a little bit less of the paint I find is just easier to work with. When you're wiping back on the tabletop, you want to use something a little bit softer. I like to use my lint-free rags or sponges because they're just a little bit softer, and paper towel tends to leave little paper marks. I have to say that I used a ton of products in this video, and the only reason I did that was because this piece is for my own home and I wanted to paint freely. It's not a commission piece. I don't have to worry about how much I'm putting in and all that. This is just for fun because in the last couple years, I'll be honest, I have sold almost all of our furniture over and over. So this year I want to focus on getting some nice pieces back into the house that we're going to keep long term. I continued with the glaze, applying it to the rest of the piece, even the dark spots, and just using the same process. And then I would just remove it with my rag. I went in really heavy in those details so I could get it in the cracks, almost like using wax, but instead of wax, it's just the glaze. I decided I wanted a little bit more depth, so I'm adding a second coat of the glaze on the tabletop. As I'm wiping back, I'm having these lines, and they're coming from actually my fingers on the towel. And I don't want it to be that crazy looking, but I like that effect. So I'm just gonna gently wipe it back and leave some of that because I like the way that it looks. I think it's a really cool effect and it gives a little bit of depth and dimension. So now for the gilding wax, I'm gonna use bronze because I want to darken it up a little bit and I wanna kind of add a little bit of shine. This bronze gilding wax has just a little bit of sparkle in it. And I'm not covering the entire piece. It's nice and highlighted with that burlap, but I am gonna go over it, over the burlap with the gilding wax. It still wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, so now I'm gonna highlight some of the raised parts, not all of them, just a little bit here and there with a little bit of gold gilding wax. Now to take it even a step further, I'm gonna dress this table up with the Magnolia Garden transfer from Dixie Belle. I just cut the pieces of the transfer out that I want to use, take it off the backing paper, and then rub it on with the stick they provide. When it's all rubbed on, I just carefully start removing the front paper, and then the transfer sticks to your piece. It took me a while to play around with the transfer pieces and cut them up and see exactly how I wanted it to fit. So I did have a little bit of trouble with that, but ultimately when I figured it out, it was almost like a little puzzle piece. It came out so pretty. I think that this transfer was so perfect. I felt like it was kind of meant to be for this piece. Now to be sure that there's no bubbles, because bubbles would actually interfere with your transfer sticking, I want to take my soft sanding sponge and just sort of go over the entire piece and make sure that there's no bubbles. This will pop the bubbles without ripping the transfer. I've applied my transfer and something was bothering me. The edges of this looked muddy. It didn't look clean. It just kind of was driving me nuts. So I did end up taking some of the Best Dang wax in brown and just going over the beveled edge. And it was so not necessary. I don't have to use all these products that I used, but I just wanted to because it was my piece and I was having fun with it and I wanted it to look the way I want it to look. So if you were going to do this as a commission piece, you could have probably skipped, not using 2 gilding waxes. You don't have to use the Best Dang wax. I didn't have to actually prime the top. It wasn't necessary. It was just extra that I did. So I know I'm using a lot of products, but it was just because this is the way that my project piece went for me. Now I want to seal in my transfer. So I'm using Varathane's water-based polyurethane for this, and I do end up going over the entire table. I don't have to worry too much about sealing the legs of this table because I used the gator hide as my glaze, and that's a sealer anyway, so I've already sealed that, but I do just go over with 1 coat of the water-based polyurethane because why not? I have it out and I'm doing it, I might as well just go for it. And since I didn't apply a lot of the Best Dang wax to the sides, it was already dry. I waited for it to dry and then I went over that with some of the polyurethane. I love how this piece turned out. It was a lot of work, but I feel like it was really worth it. And I'm gonna use it as an accent piece in my upstairs hallway. It has an earthy vibe to it, and I think that's why the Magnolia transfer went with it so nice. I went back and forth on whether I should take that little backer piece off the top, but I really kind of love it. I love the antique feel and the earthy vibe, and I don't know, I just like it just this way, so I kept it on. If you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe button because it helps my channel grow and it also tells me that you like what I'm doing and I should keep going.